All right, today we are going to nature journal from my window. And so I know that everybody has different windows at home, but this is my window right here. Luckily, I have a pretty good view a lot of times of day and can see cool stuff right out my window. Here's an example of some of the plants and little sort of landscapes that I've drawn recently from my window. But some of these plants, like this oak tree, you might have seen before on my nature journal pages because I've drawn them quite a bit looking out my window. I didn't used to nature journal from my window. I didn't used to nature journal anything in my backyard until I did a nature journaling challenge where I tried to nature journal every single day. I used to always go to far away places or at least drive to a park to nature journal. But when we get in the habit of nature journaling every day, a lot of times we have to look at what is right outside our window, and nature journaling out your window can be such a good practice even if you draw the same oak tree over and over again. So I'm just gonna check in on the chat here. I see a lot of people posting. Just wanna say hi to everybody. Hi Angie, hi Jean, hi Cindy. Thanks for joining in. And we are gonna be looking out my window. It's a little bit bright right now, and we're gonna be doing some landscapes and also looking at some plants, and I'll talk about some tips. My particular window does not have a screen in it, so I can actually set my nature journal down right on the windowsill, as you can see here, and there is no screen, which is bad for bugs, but good for nature journaling. So I might be getting bit by mosquitoes later tonight, and oh, Shirley is here as well. Oh, and a bunch of people here are patrons. So Shirley is a new patron on Patreon. Thank you so much for joining in. And Jean and Angie are also both patrons. And I can't remember if Cindy is too. There's 50 patrons on my Patreon now, so sometimes it's hard to keep track. But thanks to all of you, and I will be posting your names in the description on this video so that you all get credit for your support on there. And right now we're going to jump into it, but as you can see, I have my document camera set up over here so you can see my pages. You can see a little bit of my view right now. Maybe I can bring the camera over here a little bit more. And you can see it's a little bit bright, so the camera's having trouble picking it up, but my document camera will adjust to that. You can see the skyline there, and we'll look at some mountains. And I'll actually talk a little bit about an app. I don't talk about technology too much on the show, but I'm going to talk about an app that will help you identify the mountains that you might be able to see from your window. Oh, Terry is here also. Hi, Terry. So I'm going to jump right into it. Let's switch to the document camera, and we're going to start with some of the usual things that we would do nature journaling. So we're going to start with some metadata and a landscapeito. Big surprise, right? And then we're going to look at some of the cool plants that we can see right outside of my window, such as, look at that tree tobacco. That is a tobacco right there. And you can see the mountain out there. Last year, I could see fires on that mountain. Hopefully that won't happen again this year. And I'm going to talk about an app that you can use for identifying mountains that you might be able to see from your window. There's another mountain out there, and we don't have very much smoke in the sky. I know some of you do tonight, so you might want to be nature journaling with your window closed, but I'm going to be doing it with my window open for now. So these are some pages that I did from my window on a previous session. You can probably guess what nature journaling tools I'm using. Yes, it is the Fude Demonin and Watercolor. So I'm going to start using that same tool for today. So let's find a new page. Here is a new page, and let's get to it. And I'm going to start with some metadata first. Let's get this adjusted. Hopefully you can see pretty well here. So it is important to still do metadata even when you're at home. So my road is called Goldridge, and I just call my house Goldridge, so I'll just write Goldridge. And what day is today? It is August 11th. And I will put a sun over here, starting to go down. Completely clear, no clouds in the sky. A light breeze. I've been meaning to try to get in the habit of putting down the Beaufort scale for wind, but I'm really bad at remembering it. So I just kind of make a couple symbols to show the wind coming from the ocean. And metadata is really important. Lots of people are talking about fire lately. Metadata and paying attention to the climate on a daily basis every time you nature journal is really important for becoming aware of your fire conditions. So for example, the fact that this wind is coming from the ocean is really relevant. It's probably, I'm gonna guess temperatures and humidity, it's on the warm side. It's probably about 67, maybe 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's probably a low humidity. I'm guessing it's probably like 40% RH humidity. And I'm gonna draw sort of just this, I like to do a little bit of a symbol showing where I'm looking these days. And that is my metadata right there. Really simple, easy to skip. Yay, eBay is here. It's easy to skip the metadata, especially when you're nature journaling at home from your window, but I'm really glad that I didn't skip today. Okay, so now I'm gonna jump into a landscape ethos. So let's look at the landscape together and make some choices. Where are my, oh, here they are. So I have these tools here that I can use for framing a landscape. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'll space it over here. It's really similar in size to this. So from a composition perspective, that can be less than ideal. Having a slightly bigger one here would probably look better, but that's fine. I'm going to use this and keep it small. This is that Fudayaku brush pen, and I like the gray for landscape ethos. If you are a perfectionist like me, then a gray pen can be a great tool, but also it can also be a dangerous tool for perfectionists because you might end up doing everything in gray. And as you can see, the camera, for example, doesn't read the gray as easily as it reads the black. Gray is sort of a tentative thing. So if you're feeling tentative, use gray, that's fine, but don't overuse it. Don't make it become a crutch. All right, so now I'm gonna switch the camera real quick so you can see how I do this sort of framing here and how I'm going to choose a landscape ethos. You might not be able to see everything out my window because it's gonna be kind of bright, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold this up out in front of me and I'm gonna look through this frame, and that's how I'm gonna decide. Like for example, if I were drawing my own face and I just wanted to do my eyes, or like part of my eyes and part of that tobacco tree behind me, part of my nose, then I would hold it like this. And then I'll fit that into my frame on the page. And that's what I'm gonna do with my landscape right now, because if I tried to just draw everything that I see out my window, I would certainly get overwhelmed because there's just way too much information out there. So by holding this frame up, I can choose, and look at that, it's almost a minuscule amount, but that's really what you can bite off. So if I want to get those mountains and a little bit of this tobacco tree, I might choose that. By bringing it closer, you can bite off a bigger chunk, but you don't want to bite off too much. So if I really want to get a lot of the tobacco, I might go right here. Maybe we'll do that because that could be fun to draw with Fude de Manin. But I kind of want to get that further background element because that will add to the sense of depth. So I'm going to switch back to the document camera now so you can see this as I do it. Okay. Let's see. Hopefully I can do this without knocking my document camera down the stairs like I did last time. You might not be able to see this yet, but I am on the edge of a stairwell that's slightly precarious. And last time I knocked the camera off of this windowsill and it fell all the way down the stairs. Luckily, it's a really cheap document camera. So instead of starting with the gray, I'm actually going to go straight in with the fountain pen, especially so that you can see it, and then I'll do the watercolor after that. So with one hand, I'm going to hold this out in front of me and choose a frame that I want. I'm having to do some gymnastics here, looking at the computer, looking at the mountains. Okay, so I see what I want. I'm going to bite the bullet, pull the trigger, mix the metaphors, and start drawing this. And I think you will hopefully be able to see these lines once they start coming out. Sometimes these fountain pens, if you leave them open for a bit, they can sort of get a little bit dry. So this is going to be that mid-ground. There's a little bit of this Oregon ash tree coming up here, going down. There's two mountain peaks here that I'm going to try to squeeze in. One coming here. I think that's Cobb Mountain. And I'm going to show you an app real soon that will help you for this part. And then there is one more really steep peak there. Then it goes back. And then I've got my tobacco tree plant that's really dark and in the foreground. Maybe not that dark, but whatever. I'll just make it really dark. So foreground elements, as I've talked about before, for atmospheric perspective, foreground elements should be darker, more saturated, more detailed, more contrasty, more warm, and I think that's all of the things. So that's atmospheric perspective. You don't want as much contrast, as much warmth, as much saturation, as much detail in things that are in the background. And you can play with that as an artist. You get to kind of fudge that and exaggerate that if you want. And this is going to be a really quick landscape beat though. All right, so this would be something you could do in 10 minutes. So what you can see right now, I probably shouldn't have made this furthest background such a dark line, but that is my furthest background. This is the midground. These are sort of trees here that are in the midground, and then this tree and this tobacco plant, those are the foreground. And then I've got my sky. So now I'm going to come in with my watercolor and color that. Yes, the sun is not cooperating with us today, but oh, Amaya's here. Yay! And just so you all know, this Sunday I'm going to be doing a collaboration video with Amaya, Melinda, and Beth Ann. All of them are nature journal educators with different nature journal shows, a nature journal podcast, nature journal classes, and Amaya's doing a nature journal magazine. And everybody is also on Patreon. So that means that you can join as a member their Patreon and help support the work that they're doing and also get special benefits. So super excited that Amaya's here, and don't miss that show this Sunday at 3 p.m. I'll be talking to all of them at the same time. Amaya, Beth Ann, and Melinda, all amazing nature journal educators. So now I'm going to add watercolor to this, so that will be fun. But first, let me take a sip of this amazing iced tea that I made with special, what's it called? Hibiscus that turns it pink and provides lots of vitamin C. I could probably paint with that also. But don't mix your painting and your drinking supplies because that can be dangerous. All right, so let's do some watercolor, y'all. Dun, dun, dun. No, the event on Sunday is for everybody, so please join in. It is for everybody. It's Sunday at 3 p.m. I usually do a live show on Sundays at 1 p.m., but this Sunday it's going to be at 3 p.m. because that works better for Australia. Okay, of course, I'm using my usual watercolor tools, this Aquash, Pentel Aquash size large, and my John Muir Laws palette. So I'm going to start first with blue. Remember, when you're doing landscape ethos, blue is a dangerous color because your tendency is to think the sky is really blue, but watch this. What color is that sky? It looks white. The main thing to notice is that it's such a pale value. It is like 5 times paler than these foreground vegetation elements. And look at, see that little bit of blue back there? That is my mountain, okay? That is that mountain in the background of my painting. So you can see this line that I did was probably way too dark. I might have just done that with my gray Fudayaku brush pen because look at the line. Do you see a line between that mountain and the sky? Not really. You barely just see this blue color, and that blue color is almost as dark as that blue color up there. So don't over blue your sky because blue, if you look down here, you can really see blue is a very dark pigment. These are all blues, and look at how dark they are. So it's really easy to, in your mind, think that the sky is blue and just put a bunch of blue watercolor on your paper and ruin the actual look of the sky. Because in your brain and in the viewer's brain, the more important thing than the color is the value. The difference between light and dark is more important than the hue. So how blue it is doesn't matter. What matters is how dark it is in relationship to these other elements. And as you can see, when we look out here, look, I know that's a plant, but it's not really green. It looks black. And that's what matters, is that that looks black in relationship to that, which almost looks white. So even though I know this is blue, it should be blue, I'm not gonna make it super blue because when I look out there right now, I don't see that much blue. There's also some cool hummingbirds out here that I might get a nature journal in a moment. Maybe you can hear them already. Cheep, cheep, cheep. Did you hear that? It's the rare Heifer hummingbird. Okay, so I'm just gonna make a really weak blue and I'm gonna test it right here before I commit to it. That's probably good enough. That's all I'm gonna do right there. That's it. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring that down into this mountain. See that? The other thing I want you to notice right now, so see how I brought the same blue that is in my sky down into my background. Oh yay, Eli is here. Another one of my amazing patrons and friends and nature journal companions. So what I want you to notice right now is check this out. When you look at the sky, where does it get darker and more blue? Does it get darker and more blue near the horizon, or does it get darker and more blue higher up in the sky? Tell me what you see. Does it get darker and more blue near the horizon, or does it get darker and more blue higher up in the sky? Tell me that. What do you think? Ooh, someone's talking about dew point. I think that dew point is a relationship, actually. So relative humidity, well, relative humidity might be a relationship too. Some of the measurements for climate are relationships, which is really interesting because a lot of times we don't in our culture especially look at relationships as much as we look at things by themselves. But dew point, I believe, is a relationship between temperature and humidity. And relative humidity, as the word relative indicates, is already a relationship. Because depending on how warm the air is, the air can hold more or less humidity. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I think that dew point is also some type of relationship between temperature and humidity, and perhaps even pressure. All of those work together. That's why a pressure cooker can actually reach higher temperatures than a regular pot. Under pressure, you can get more heat. It's weird. Okay, back to the painting. Now that this color has dried out, you can see that that is quite pale. I mean, the light is kind of weird, but there is definitely some blue on there, but it is quite pale. Didn't overblue the sky. It's really easy to overblue the sky, even when your paper is not here. Let's see if I can shade it a little bit. I'm fine with that. I'm going to keep it that way. You can always make it darker. You can't make it lighter with watercolor. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to color this midground, and I'm going to make it a lot darker. Because if you look out there, that's that first big step that you see. Look at that step. Because over there is that mountain, right? So pale you can barely see it. So pale. My camera can't even adjust. Come on, camera, you can do it. The camera can be your friend, because see how the camera is unable to adjust to this brightness? That can actually help you remember how pale that mountain is and how dark these foreground things are in contrast. Your eyes and your brain sort of adjust all of this for you, and then when you draw, it can be confusing. Okay, so I'm going to tilt it back down here. I'm getting a crick in my neck from turning around to look at the... Yes, I am near the coast. I am only a few miles away from the coast here. Angie, great question. I think I should include that into my drawing. Oops, I left my fountain pen open. Probably a bad idea. This way to the coast. Okay, so now I'm going to do this. I'm going to mix up a dark color, and I'm not going to make it too saturated of green. That would be a mistake. So I'm going to start with this Serpentine Genuine, which is kind of the green that I always start with. And then I think I'm going to make it less saturated, even though my foreground elements should be more saturated. Oh, well, this is my mid-distance. So I'm going to put a little bit of blue into it, actually, because I want this to kind of recede into the midground. So I'm going to take a little bit of this Perylene blue. See how that made it a lot darker and also less saturated, also more blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint all of these foreground elements except for my pink flowers. Because I want there to be a strong contrast between those mountains in the background and these trees in the foreground. But they are conifers, they are sort of pointy, so I want some points, but I don't want it to look too, oh, you know what, this tree in the foreground, I'm going to skip it, this Oregon ash, because it actually is kind of more of a yellow-green. I often will paint this solid color through all of my foreground and midground elements and then add the other colors on top, but this Oregon ash has a very yellow color. So usually you don't have paler things in the foreground, but in this case I'm going to let it be, even though I did paint this tree tobacco, the dark color, and I'm going to make it come up here over the sky, like that. Okay, and while that's drying, I'm gonna wait for that to dry there, but I am gonna put in my pink. So I just wanna make sure my brush is really clean before I go from green to pink. And usually to make a pink, you'll wanna take, you could just take your quinacridone pink and really dilute it, or you could take your quinacridone pink and mix it with a little bit of white gouache here, and that makes a pink color. So I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to go for the more saturated one, so I'm going to skip the gouache and just dilute it here in this one clean area on my mixing zone here. And I'm going to go in. You might not be able to see this, but these are all pink flowers, and that's a characteristic element of this plant. Let me show you right here. Ta-da! So just imagine tons of these, and they are so sticky. Imagine tons of these on that plant out there. Oh my gosh, that made my fingers so sticky. My paper is going to get, and my camera is going to get all crazy. So I'm going to go in here with that pink. Don't overdo it. But this is like one of my saturated elements, so I kind of want a little bit, wow, that's way too crazy, way too pink. So I'm going to come in here and kind of lift it off a little bit. And don't make it too regular. Ideally, I would have reserved some spots here in front of these dark things for that, but I didn't, so I'll just kind of pretend and maybe kind of go outside the boundaries there. Don't overdo it. Wow, I'm pretty close to overdoing it there, Marley. All right. Hold your horses. Hold your horses. That was close. That was very close. Yes, Angie, that is a 4-year-old tobacco plant. And this type of tobacco grows into a giant tree. This one is 2 stories high. It survives through the whole winter, and the hummingbirds love it. They love it way more than my feeder right here. There's basically, this thing is sort of sad because all of the hummingbirds just want to go to that tree. And the crazy thing is even though it produces flowers and gets lots of pollinators, it does not produce seeds. Oh, I guess I am talking kind of slow. I have never heard of anyone watching the show on 0.75 speed. Only heard of people watching it on faster speed so that they could catch up to the live. Okay, back to the painting. Let's get serious here, all right? So now I've got this one element here. You know, this is technically, if I weren't talking, this would be like a 10-minute proposition. So now I'm going to go in and I don't know if you saw, but that is the tree over there. See, I put that one color behind everything else, but I wanted to reserve this color because it is quite a bit paler, even though it is in the foreground. So what I could do to make up for it is see how there is contrast. There's like some dark stuff here. So what I'll try to do is I'll put in that yellow, get that saturation and that paleness, but I don't want it to be paler than my background or midground elements, but I will get it pale, and I'll get the yellow, and then I'll create some contrast because those foreground elements, remember, the foreground should have more saturation, more contrast, more warmth, more detail, and what am I forgetting? More darkness than the background. So my sky, my mountain back there should have less warmth, less saturation, less contrast, less detail, and less darkness. You got to remember those things. Okay, let's do this. Final touch. So I'm just going to do this Serpentine Genuine because that's already a yellow thing going here. Boom. No problem. And then let's do a wet on wet. Why not? I'm kind of wishing my Mountain were a little bit darker relative to the sky, but it's fine. So now I'm gonna do a little wet on wet because I'm into watercolor. I'm into getting crazy. Let's just get crazy. I'm gonna take some of this. What should I use? I think I'll use a shadow violet. Just get it straight from the pan. No mixing, no dilution. Let's see, this is a real wet spot right there, so I don't want to mess with that. That might be too crazy. Let's just go in here because I see that there's like a branch coming up. Oop, there's a branch coming up, and then there's like a dark spot down there. That might be too much because it might not look like a single element anymore. But I got a little bit of contrast, and I'm not going to mess with this at all anymore. Done, done, leave it, stop. Watercolor is like that. Sometimes you can overwork it, and it's good to know what it feels like to overwork a painting, so I recommend doing it at least one time. Oh my gosh, I'm running out of water. I'm almost out of water. What will I do? Oh, good thing I'm in my kitchen, and I can just get water right here. No problem. I also always have a backup water brush, of course, or 3. So, ooh, that one doesn't have tape on it. What does that mean? Uh-oh. Anyway, so got that done. So now let's do something else from our window here. And let that dry. Don't mess with that. Leave that alone. And, oh, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you this app real quick. I usually don't talk about this stuff, and it might not even be visible on the screen. But check this out. Yes, Cindy, great question. Okay, so Cindy's asking about material for frames. Yes, traditionally people use like a cut out piece of paper. So I wonder if I could draw it somewhere so that you could see what I'm talking about. Yes, I guess I can just draw it right here in my nature journal. So a lot of times people will have a frame that looks like this, usually out of cardstock or like that material that, oh, check this out. Hello. Did you see that? I think Eli is suggesting that I'm highly caffeinated. I won't be offended by that assumption. Okay, so a lot of times this would be the traditional thing. So pretend this is like cardstock, like what you would use to frame a drawing, and you can cut it. You could even do this with a piece of paper, and you can cut it so it looks like this, and then you look through this part here at your subject. And that is usually what people use for a frame, but I started cutting these out of this, I think a salad mix came in this. And what I like about this is it's much smaller because I only have to have this bit of it cut out, and it also works for my frame. The only problem with this particular plastic is it becomes, see all these scratches on it? It becomes slightly opaque, which sometimes is a good thing because when it's opaque, it means you won't see all the details. And not seeing all the details is actually often beneficial, but look how small it is. It's virtually indestructible compared to the paper ones, virtually indestructible. It's clear, and I can use it as the very same frame that I use to trace my shapes on my paper. So the next step for me is going to be, one thing you could do is you could draw your rule of thirds or whatever onto here. Anything you wanted, you could draw those lines onto here. My next step is going to be getting some more high quality plastic and using that. But really great question. I think that was Cindy that pointed that out. Thank you, Cindy, for pointing that out. There's pros and cons to using like the paper ones or using the plastic ones. I like that this is so much smaller, and my paper ones always would get messed up. And this one, you could also make it, if this were tinted plastic, then it would also work for helping you see values instead of colors. Okay, so that's that. I'm gonna write viewfinders. I have a whole video about how to make one of these and use one of these. If you look up, I think it's called, like, on my channel, if you do a search, how to draw landscapes with a viewfinder or how to make a viewfinder, and I show you how I made this, and then I use it for drawing landscapes. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check out what I'm going to try to do here. I'm going to try to be a little bit more scientific than usual. Here we go. So I got this app. You might not be able to see. Oh, come on. Is this full brightness? I'm at full brightness, so let's adjust here. Okay, so check this out. This app right here called Peak Visor, well, you can point it at the hills around you and it'll tell you the names of the mountains. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to look at my landscape painting here, and then I'm going to try to identify the mountains that are in this landscape. You might not be able to see all the visuals. Whoa! My whole document camera just fell over. So I'm going to point this. I wish you could see this whole thing. Okay, you can kind of see those words up there at the top? Those are showing me the names of mountains that I'm pointing my camera. Those are the mountains in my skyline. Yes, Ivea Peak Visor, and this is one of the free ones. There's several apps. It literally took me 2 minutes to find this. So what I'm noticing is that one right there is Black Mountain. I definitely see that one. But right here in my actual painting, the ones that I have are Geyser Peak and Cobb Mountain. And so this also tells me how high those are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and write those down here and add them. And this is the way you could add a little bit more sort of, you know, a lot of us might be more on the artsy side. Some of us might be, more on the scientific side. And combining those two can be really useful. And just getting to know where you live in the world is really useful. Also, I should point out that these are white settler, European American settler names for these mountains, and where I live is probably like the intersection between Pomo territory and this might be Wapo territory out here, and those are indigenous people that lived here for thousands of years before their lands were basically stolen. So it's good to point out that when talking about the land that we live on. So the settler name for this mountain is Geyser Peak. I should have looked up the indigenous names first. Geyser Peak. And then over here, I think this one was Cobb Mountain. Yes, there are geysers here. There is, at night, I can often see these power plants, geothermal power plants out here. And this one is Cobb Mountain. There was a big fire out here last year that I could see from my house, from my window. That was a little bit stressful. Okay, so now I'm gonna look at the app and see what it says in terms of the heights. So it's saying that Geyser Peak is 3,455 and Cobb is 4,731. So 3455, 4731. 3455. I'm going to use, just to be fancy, I'm going to use my gray ink. 3445 and 3455 and 4731. Okay, so that's two mountains. Look at that, how it kind of looks cool actually, just from an aesthetic point of view, to add that written information there. I feel more sciencey now instead of just landscape-y, artsy-y. So I kind of like that. I'm glad that I have that app. I hope they don't make me start paying for it, but right now it's free, so that's great. And even though I appreciate the work that people put into doing it, and there we go. That's my landscapeito. So now I'm going to skip over to just doing plants. So what I'm going to do is I've got this, I'm going to do sort of plant portrait, species profile of this tobacco. You've probably seen me draw this tobacco before, and I did pick some of the pieces from the plant that I have in my house, but you could do this even without going out and picking. Oh, hi Debbie, thanks for joining in. I'm going to draw like some pieces of it close up also. All right, so let's see here. Oh, and maybe the hummingbirds will come close while I'm doing this. Maybe they'll even see this flower and try to just drink it right here. Sometimes they see your watercolor palette, and butterflies do this too, but they see the bright colors in your palette and will come close to them. All right, so first I'll do the opposite of what I normally do, and I'll do a close-up of the flower. So let's see here. I might need some chocolate to do this, but let me get my pen. Yes, chocolate, chocolate. So one of the downsides of nature journaling from your window, downsides, upsides, it's sort of a perspective thing, is that you're really close to the comforts of home. And for me personally, I think one of the reasons why I never used to nature journal at home is because I would be so easily distracted at home, and it's so easy to go do something else. It's so easy to go make a cup of tea and stop nature journaling to open some chocolate instead of drawing. So whether that's an upside or a downside is personal opinion, or maybe it depends on the day and how procrastinatory you're feeling. I don't know if that's actually an adjective, but I just made it up. So that could be one of the downsides of nature journaling from your window. This is a new chocolate, Evea. Look at how fancy this is. I don't know if I can just... Whoa there, that is a fancy package. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I should post my P.O. box address that you can send me chocolate to if you would like to support the Nature Journal show. I think I have a little bit of tobacco on my finger, so hopefully that won't really like affect. Is that too big of a piece of chocolate to eat? Okay, next we're going to do this thing, and we're going to plant this lovely tobacco plant, okay? Let's do that. Okay. There we go. So, I think I just got a little bit of nicotine contact high. And this flower is already wilting. So this is a 3-dimensional flower, but we're going to flatten it to 2 dimensions and zoom in on it here. Most important, look at these 5. The petals are fused into a single corolla, but you can still see there's this 5-part symmetry, 5 major points. That's a huge clue into this family. Huge clue. And then let's look at the sexy parts. Oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that word because now I might get demonetized on YouTube. But it's just a flower, okay? Plus this one doesn't even get pregnant. It doesn't make viable seeds, which is really, really interesting and unusual for tobacco. But I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the male parts, so interesting. I'm gonna have to look at this more, but I had never actually looked close enough. Wow, I can't believe this. Okay, so I'm kind of tripping out right now because I've looked at this plant so many times and I've planted so many of these, but I've never really looked at these male reproductive parts. And what I'm noticing right now is there doesn't seem to be any pollen on them. I'm gonna have to check more, but that has no pollen on it at all. If you've seen me stick my nose in other flowers before, then you know what I'm talking about, and I'm not seeing any of that messy yellow stuff coming off of here. So that is very interesting. I'm not going to jump to conclusions, even though the human brain is really good at doing that. And I'm just going to draw these. And I'm going to focus on observations, not interpretations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are things that I can observe objectively and directly without imposing my interpretations, because my interpretations, even my observations a lot of times can be really influenced by, for example, the heteronormative, patriarchal, capitalistic society that I live in. And funnily enough, those kind of belief systems can actually affect even how we think about flowers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers or other reproductive strategies in the plant and animal kingdom, which often don't fit into these clear categories that our culture, due to our basically Greco-Roman, Middle Eastern intellectual heritage, makes us kind of focus on. Also, the type of simians that we are does play a role. So I've got these. I'm going to write down 5. I can never remember the male symbol, which way the arrow goes. 5 male parts. 1 female part. So that green thing right there, that's the receptive part. Let me hold it up close to the camera. So the green thing coming out there, that's the receptive part. And I do have a video about plant families, so you can check that out. Oh, Ivea's doing a Solanaceae class. Definitely check out Ivea's botany classes. Ivea is quite the botanist and quite the teacher too. So I know that Ivea has been doing some awesome classes, and there you can watch them. Ivea, post the links to those YouTube videos of some of your other botany classes, because those are really important for nature journals. So you might notice here, this is looking a little bit scratchy. That is the pointy end of the Feuille de Monet. It doesn't always look that scratchy, but I think sometimes when it's been out in the air, it's drying quite a bit. The other side can be quite thick. Ooh, look, the other side is even a little bit dry too. I wonder why that is. Sometimes you have to lick it. Actually, I don't recommend that. But you can wet your finger and kind of go like that and kind of get it flowing a little bit better. Or it could just be that I'm running out of ink. Oh yeah, I'm running out of ink. But guess what I did is I bought myself a second Feuille de Monet. And that for me is like a big deal, even though it's only like a $15 pen. Oh shoot, now I don't remember which one's which. Okay, that's the new one. All right, so where's my flower at? Let's do this. Stop yapping and keep drawing. Let's push these values a little bit. I want to get the fact that there's these like trichomes everywhere, these glands everywhere. This is a very sticky, hairy flower. For some reason, hairlessness is often thought of as sexy for humans. Even Julius Caesar supposedly shaved his entire body regularly. So that's Julius Caesar, thousands of years ago, very manly man, presumably. And hairlessness was thought of as, at least for him, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But look at this flower, and it's quite hairy. So, geez, I should probably be careful about these terms that I'm using, because this might affect how well my YouTube video does. Okay, so you can see there I've got some of the general shape. It's a little bit impressionistic, but that's fine. Now I'll wait for that to dry so that I can add watercolor to it. And then in the meantime, maybe I'll just add a little bit of title here. And I'm going to use my Foreground pen for that. So hopefully I can fit this. I'm not even going to try to space it out. I'm just going to go straight for it. This is the genus name. Will it fit? Oh shoot. Can I remember the species name? Okay, I think it's tomentosa, which means like hairy or woolly or something. So the species name is always lowercase, and the genus name is capitalized. I hope I can fit it here. So, ooh, I'm not going to fit it. Oh no, I'm going to have to squeeze. Gonna have to squeeze. Ah! Squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. Oh gosh. That worked out, but barely. So what I'm going to suggest is in the future, use a Tombow pen. So either this gray one, and this is the N95. No, not like the mask, but the gray Tombow pen, very pale gray. Or this is the 910. And this is a peach color. So what you can do is you can just sort of figure out how many spaces you're going to need for letters like this. N, I, C, O. You know, you can figure out which ones are going to go up, which ones need to go down. And then afterwards, you can come back and fill in the letters. See what I'm saying? And that way you can either use pencil or you can use pen, like a pale pen, and then afterwards you don't have to deal with this kind of squeezing problem that just happened to me right now. Okay, so now this is dry, so I can add the watercolor to that. And I'm just checking on the chat. Oh my gosh, there's so much interesting stuff going on in the chat. I wish I could fully participate, but I don't know if I will be able to. Hi, Chris. Oh, Chris has a really interesting little anecdote about goats in Solanaceae. Love that. Oh, great question, Eli. Yeah. Eli, this one, it makes these weird runners, which for tobacco is kind of crazy. But yeah, it does not make seeds. It only makes runners. So it's just cloning. Vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction. Oh, there was just a hummingbird here. I think I scared it. Okay, going for color. Time for color. So start with the palest colors first, as usual. There's a teeny bit of yellow kind of throughout, so I'll just, if I want to be like really orthodox, I'll just do yellow throughout and then let that dry and then add my darker colors successively on top of that. So I guess I'll be orthodox for a change. Okay, while that's happening, I'll eat some dried persimmons that I made last year. I wish I could show you the really pretty ones, but oh yeah, check this out. I bet you can't guess what that is. The light's changing. Okay, now I'm going to just do a bigger picture of the. Oh, look at how the light's changing out there too. So cool. So I'm going to just do a sort of bigger picture of that tobacco plant. Look at how big that thing is. That thing is like as tall as my house. So now I'm going to do a quick sketch. Ooh. Quick sketch of that plant. Or at least sort of like a branch of it. Yeah, no, I'll just try to do the whole plant. Oh, it's so complex. I'm just going to have to really simplify it. Sometimes it's really hard to simplify things like this. You want to like Draw every leaf. Gotta figure out like what the major patterns are, where the major lights and darks are. These are the flowers coming off. See, this one doesn't have the like. This new Fude Demonin, the fine point part is not flowing. Look at how that's not really flowing yet. Sort of annoying. Less control. Sometimes having less control is good for the artists. Some of these leaves are dark, so I'll just kind of make some dark spots here. More branches. And that, I feel like that kind of captures the vibe. Yeah, Eli, I'll totally hook you up with one of these if you want. The thing is they can be invasive and spread, so yep. All right, good night, Angie. Sleep well. Thanks for joining in. See you next time. Okay, this might be getting almost dry here, so I'm gonna wait for this one to dry. This is almost dry, so I'm gonna come in there and color that one. Any guesses about what these are? They're sour is what they are. Okay, watercolor time. Get this sticky thing out of here. It's so sticky and toxic. I think I have to throw it out the window. Oops, wait, I was supposed to be coloring that. Shoot. Never mind. Dang it, what was I thinking? Okay, I'm actually gonna go for my really saturated phthalo yellow green. This is the sepals right here, the unopened. That is an unopened one. Get that green, la-di-da, clean the brush, get some pink. Let's get it real nice and pink, and then get ready to fade it. And unfortunately, I threw away my, that is probably way too dark, so quickly clean the brush as much as possible and just keep it wet and then fade this before it stains. Try to fade that in. Clean it while this pink is taking over. Okay, fade that. Fade it. Remember, these were green, so I don't want to color those too much. That's probably pretty good right there. Maybe take a little bit off. Boom. Ta-da, that'll be good enough. While I have that pink, I might as well do these. Quickly clean the brush. Doesn't need to be perfect. I'll go with the serpentine. Serpentine genuine in here. This is sort of my bigger picture of the plant. I should put a scale to give an idea. If this is species profile, I should have a scale. So what I'll do, for scale, I could measure it, or I could just draw myself right here. Yes, this is what I look like. Ah, is that the one that's empty? That is actually what I look like. Ah, that arm is way too long. There we go. So that's about the height of the plant, I would say. Perfect. Okay, so I've got close up on the flower, got the species name, common name, big picture, me next to it, and I think that's pretty good for the species profile. I was gonna do these other plants here too, but you could just do a screenshot or come back to the video, pause the video, and Nature Journal these. This is another plant that is visible from my window. Any guesses? Any guesses? Any guesses of this plant? So it's been about an hour, but if you weren't talking and blabbing as much as I was, you would probably be able to do this much nature journaling in 20 minutes from your window. And I know everybody has different windows. I know that I have, like, I'm really lucky and grateful for the view that I have from my window and from my garden and stuff. But there's probably something, we didn't get to see any birds that much today, but there's probably something, even pigeons or even a London plane tree that you can see outside of your window. And in about 20 minutes, you could probably do this much nature journaling from your window, even without opening the actual window. So it is possible. You wouldn't have to manage, dealing with the camera and dealing with the extremely difficult audience like I've had to deal with this evening. So these are all things you can do. You can add a little bit of kind of, more objective stuff in, like identifying some mountains or hills that you might be able to see from your house. Ooh, look at that. That flower is still quite wet. But these are some ideas for how you can nature journal from your window. And don't forget, this weekend is going to be super cool. On Sunday, I'm going to be talking to Amaya. She's here right now. I'm going to be talking to Melinda Nakagawa, who teaches nature journaling and is the Monterey Bay Nature Journal Club, and our very own nature journaling podcast. Hopefully you know about Beth Ann in Australia. She's doing the Journaling with Nature podcast. Just search for Journaling with Nature and you'll find it. We have our own podcast now, yes, and she's up to 50 episodes, I believe. And Amaya is making a magazine. So we have multiple YouTube channels, we have a podcast, we have a club, we have tons of amazing people in our community. We have a magazine. I mean, come on, this is awesome. So this Sunday at 3 p.m., I'll be talking with Amaya, Melinda, and Beth Ann. We'll be talking about Patreon because all four of us have Patreon, and there's even more nature journal educators showing up on Patreon. And for a lot of them, as little as $1 a month, you can support them and get access to cool special stuff. And yes, Eli, you are correct. It is elderberry, and it is a variety that has different leaves. And here is another one that has weird different leaves. So variable leaves and the same berries. Thank you all for joining in, and I encourage you, coming up this week or this weekend, go out and nature journal something from your window, something in your backyard, something in your nearby nature, because that is the nature that is right next to you, and it really matters to form a connection to that nature. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining in. Eli, Ivea, Jean, Angie, all these people that have been joining in during the conversation. Chris, thanks for joining in. Amaya, and her sweet potato. Who else was here? I saw there was someone on Facebook's watching. I can't read your name. All of you who are watching at home and who watch the recorded version, thanks for joining in. And I'll see you on Sunday at 3 p.m. Bye. Bye.